The body regulates its temperature in several ways, and your heart has to work harder in the winter to maintain its normal functions. This can lead to an increased risk of heart attack. Join us live this morning for an exclusive interview is Dr. Vincent Nardy with Premier Health, talking about exercise and in the cold and how to prevent heart troubles. Now, Dr. Nardy, thank you so much for joining us live this morning. Can you explain why someone's heart rate increases when breathing in cold air and how this can lead to heart stress?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So ultimately, there's a lot of different autoregulatory mechanisms. One of the things is when we breathe in cold air, it can stimulate some receptors in our body that increase our heart rate. And ironically, there's also receptors that when cold air touches our face, that can actually bring our heart rate down. So it's sort of a balance there. But the other thing that can happen is that the cold air in general can cause our arteries to constrict or narrow, and that can actually increase our blood pressure. Both increasing in heart rate and blood pressure can cause what we call an increase in myocardial demand. Ultimately, increases the stress around the heart and on the heart, causes it to beat harder and a little bit faster. And by doing that, it requires more oxygen. So somebody who is otherwise fit, that's not a problem. But somebody who has coronary artery disease who may not be able to adapt as well, increasing that myocardial demand can actually set them up and possibly lead to a heart attack.
Now, what are some of the winter activities that can increase your risk for a heart attack?
So, some of the risk factors that can do that, for example, having a family history, you can have high cholesterol, high blood pressure. Somebody who's already had a heart attack, diabetes, for example, people who have had a stroke in the past. Some of these things are some of the classic risk factors that can increase your risk for having this.
So what are some steps individuals can take to protect their heart health while being active during these cold winter months?
So ultimately, when you go outside, some of the best things you can do are to hydrate adequately. Make sure you're staying as warm as possible when you are going outside. And if you do have some of these risk factors and you are going to plan to shovel your snow or do something exertional, you should probably talk to your doctor about it first. I'm not telling anybody that they can't go outside to go from their car to the store, but it's something, if you start doing something more than just walking around the block, for example, and it's really cold, it's probably best to talk to your doctor before you start doing some of those exertional activities on top of the cold.
All right, real quick, Dr. Nardy, before you go, what are some signs that you're in trouble if you're outside and are in the cold and starting to experience some issues?
Yeah, great question. So thankfully, the signs and symptoms aren't much more different than if you were sitting in your house by the nice warm fire. So a lot of the same symptoms that for any heart attack would be having chest pain or pressure, pain that radiates to your arm or your back or up to your jaw, for example. Some people will get really short of breath and will have difficulty breathing that won't get better even when you rest. And heart attacks can also mimic things like indigestion or nausea and vomiting. So any of these symptoms are sort of concerning, and if they persist after you come inside or continue to get worse, it's probably best to call 911 or go to your closest emergency room.
Great advice this morning. Thanks for helping keep people safe at home, Dr. Nardy. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.